I'm Aaron, a birding naturalist. Welcome back to my channel. It is July in Central California, which means it is hot. And so before I cook out here, let's talk about how birds beat the heat. Like humans and other mammals, birds are endothermic, which means that they use internally generated heat to maintain their body temperature. They're not reliant necessarily on the temperature outside of themselves. They use their own metabolic heat to maintain body temperature. It's a very cool adaptation, very cool ability that we endotherms have, but it does create some problems. And that is, when it is really hot outside, you don't really need a lot of heat from the inside. You know, it's going to be too much heat. So, what do birds do? Birds certainly live in hot environments. There are lots of birds that live in deserts. There are a lot of birds that live in very exposed, very sunny locations. So they have to have abilities to cool themselves down, to get rid of that excess heat, so they don't basically cook themselves. And as a fellow endotherm, birds have a lot of strategies that are quite similar to a lot of things that you or I might do when we get too hot. So, for one thing, unlike what I'm doing right now, birds tend to hide in the shade when it gets really hot. They find shade, nice cool places, and also they generally move around less. They kind of rest because, as you know, when you move your body a whole lot, you tend to generate more heat. If you hold still, internally you generate less heat. So holding still and staying someplace shady, two good tricks. Birds also pant, kind of like a dog. Same idea. They're trying to get heat from inside them using the air in their lungs and the moisture that is released through their breath to reduce the amount of heat inside them, to release that heat. So they pant. In many birds, you can actually see this. It's called a gular flutter, because they have a gular pouch, which is sort of a pouch of skin underneath their bill, sort of at the base of their neck. You can think about this most dramatically in pelicans. The big pouch of a pelican, that's a gular pouch. And so birds can take their gular pouch and they can flutter it back and forth to move air in and out to reduce the amount of heat that they have, to get rid of that excess heat. Another thing that birds certainly do quite a bit is to find water. I mean, that's what you and I would do, right? If it's hot, what is a great thing to do? To prevent dehydration, to prevent overheating? Drink some water. Or even get into some water and bathe. And birds absolutely do these things. They drink water when it's hot, and you will see many birds, even species that don't commonly bathe or aren't water birds or seabirds, if it's hot out, they will take the opportunity, if they can find a pool of water, to splash around and get some of that water on their feathers. And so that helps cool them down as well. Speaking of feathers, that's another really cool adaptation that birds have. Birds have a great deal of muscular control over their feathers. And so this is, very useful when you're flying, because birds can sort of adjust the angle of their feathers. But it's also really good if a bird wants to not hold heat against its skin, wants to not trap heat in against itself. So what they can do is they can sort of fluff themselves up and lift those feathers up off their skin to allow air movement in between the feathers and against their skin, and so release a lot of heat off of their bodies. And also sometimes you'll see birds kind of, instead of perched with their wings really close in next to the body, they'll actually kind of hang their wings open a little bit. And that, again, is to get air currents flowing underneath their wings into the sort of axillary wing pit kind of area, which is usually a place that has sort of thinner feathers, it's less feathered, which means more exposed skin, which means if you can get some wind air currents moving around under there, that's another way of carrying off a lot of heat away from the body, and therefore keeping a bird relatively cooler. And birds use these techniques to great effect. I mean, you can definitely see birds in incredibly hot places, in the hottest parts of North America, in Death Valley. I was there recently, and in the parking lot next to us, what was hanging out there? A raven, hanging out, crazy hot. Bird was fine. Bird was perfectly willing to be in that environment and to make it work. You can see amazing footage online or in documentaries of nesting colonies of birds. I especially remember seeing a documentary that had a nesting colony of cormorants. They were out in the desert. These are cormorants that are ocean birds. They're water birds, and they are black in color. And yet they're out in the desert, thousands of them nesting together, just in the blazing heat, no trees around, no shelter. And with their gular fluttering, and with drinking enough water when they can go and get water, and with the fluffing of their feathers for heat exchange, they don't die, they can make it work. They successfully breed out in these very harsh, very hot environments. They're good at it. It's pretty impressive. And there's some things that we can do to kind of help our bird neighbors out. You can go down the list of things that I just talked about and see if you can provide some of those things in whatever space you have around. A yard, a balcony, anything. So you can provide a safe place for them to rest, preferably with shade, right? That'll help. You can provide a way for them to drink, either a spigot that has flowing water, a bath that has some water that they can actually dip themselves into, providing a source of water. Again, great tip that you can do on hot days to help your bird neighbors out. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. Another thing that is very useful is that it actually takes a fair bit of energy to get rid of heat, which sounds slightly counterintuitive, but it's true. It actually takes quite a bit of work for cells to shed themselves of heat. And so providing food is a great, useful tool, an aid, if you will, that you can give birds. So water and food, both, and then shade as well. A safe resting place in the cool. All tips, all great tricks that we can all use to aid the birds around us. So, before I completely cook out here, I'm going to take advantage of many of those things myself. I'm going to go into some shade, namely my house, and I'm going to get a glass of water, and I'm going to try to stay cool in this like 100+ degree heat that we're having recently in July. So I hope you are staying cool as well, and I hope you find some of these tips and tricks and information useful. And until next time, stay cool and enjoy the natural world.